My 15-year-old grandson, Matt, wasn't eating. His hands shook so badly the table rattled. Then I felt it, a rough piece of paper press against my knee. I didn't react. I slid it into my palm and peeked under the table. The message was messy, urgent, terrified. Grandpa, don't look at me. Check the storage unit Dad rented. Unit 234. The code is Mom's birthday, backwards. Go before Friday. Please, before she finishes it. My heart slammed in my chest. Matt kept staring at his cold food, refusing to look up. Next to him, Jennifer laughed brightly, talking about a silk scarf. She looked perfect, kind, safe. But when her eyes met mine over her wine glass, I didn't see love. I saw someone watching the clock. The dining room of my son's home in Anchorage was filled with a savory aroma of roast beef, but to me, it smelled like a trap. Outside, the Alaskan wind howled against the windows, but the chill inside the house was far worse. I sat at the head of the table, clutching a secret that felt like a hot coal in my pocket. My grandson, Matt, was sitting to my left. At 15, he was usually the life of the party. But tonight he was a shadow. His hands were bone white as they gripped his fork, and he wouldn't look up from his plate. Earlier, with a precision that chilled me, he had slid a folded scrap of paper into my hand under the table. Across from Matt sat Jennifer, my son Philip's wife of barely 6 months. She was radiant, her blonde hair perfectly coiffed, her smile wide and seemingly genuine. She was regaling us with a story about a designer boutique she'd visited that afternoon, her laughter ringing out like silver bells. To anyone else, she looked like the perfect addition to a grieving family. Philip, my only son, had met her at a charity gala in downtown Anchorage roughly 18 months after my wife, Patricia, passed away from a brutal battle with cancer. We were all broken. Patricia had been the sun we all orbited, and without her, we were drifting in the dark. Jennifer appeared like a beacon. She was 38, charming, and possessed an uncanny ability to make Philip feel seen again. They were married in 7 months, a timeline that made my internal alarm scream. But I kept quiet because I wanted my son to be whole again. But as I looked at Philip tonight, he wasn't whole. He was gray, his eyes sunken, his movements sluggish as if he were underwater. I felt the note in my pocket. Unit 234. Mom's birthday backwards. I realized then that my son wasn't recovering. He was being consumed. The decline of Philip Donovan didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, agonizing erosion. A brilliant architect who could visualize complex structures in his head, Philip began to lose his grip on reality. It started with forgotten keys and missed appointments. Then it became more frightening. He would stop mid-sentence, his eyes glazing over as if his mind had suddenly emptied. Jennifer was always there, a comforting hand on his shoulder, ready with an excuse. "It's the grief, Derek," she would whisper to me in the hallway as the Alaskan sun set early behind the Chugach Mountains. "The doctor says it's delayed trauma from losing Patricia. He just needs to rest. I've got him on a strict regimen of vitamins and herbal teas." She had taken over everything, his schedule, his diet, even his medications. She moved through the house like a gentle ghost, but she was slowly replacing every person in Philip's life. I started noticing the vitamins. She brewed a specific herbal tea every morning and evening, a dark, bitter-smelling concoction she insisted was an old family remedy for stress. Whenever I visited, she was there, a gatekeeper between a father and his son. She stopped inviting me for Sunday dinners, claiming Philip was too tired for the commotion. The most terrifying part was a change in Philip's personality. My son, once a man of ironclad opinions, became strangely submissive. He agreed with everything Jennifer said. He stopped questioning the finances or the fact that his longtime business partner, Khalid, hadn't heard from him in weeks. He was fading, turning into a hollow vessel that Jennifer was preparing for something. I looked at the tremors in his hands and knew I couldn't wait another day to find out what was in that storage unit. Unit 234. The storage facility on the outskirts of Anchorage was a graveyard of secrets. It was 2 a.m., the air biting and cold. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness as I navigated rows of corrugated metal doors. I reached Unit 234, my breath hitching in my throat. I dialed a combination. Patricia's birthday, July 14th backwards, for -1-7-0. The lock clicked with a heavy, final thud. I slid the door up, the metal screeching against the silence of the Alaskan night. I expected to find old furniture, or perhaps hidden debt records. What I found was a laboratory of malice. The unit was impeccably organized. Against one wall was a filing cabinet filled with Philip's medical records, bank statements, and a life insurance policy I didn't recognize, one valued at $5 million. But it was the workbench that made my blood run cold. There were vials of clear liquid labeled in Spanish, several boxes of syringes, and a stack of notebooks. I opened one. It was a diary, but not a personal one. It was a logbook. Tuesday, 5 milligrams dose. Subject showing signs of disorientation. Wednesday, 7 milligrams dose. Subject unable to recall morning events. Perfect. Then I saw the corkboard. It was covered in surveillance photos of me. Photos of me at the grocery store, me in my wood shop, and Matt at the park. There was a map of my house in the Hillside District with entry points circled in red. Jennifer wasn't just killing my son. She was preparing to eliminate me to ensure no one was left to contest the will. I stood there in the dark, shaking, holding proof that my daughter-in-law was a professional monster. I spent the rest of the night in my truck, parked in a vacant lot near the Anchorage harbor, my phone screen illuminating my terrified face. I searched the name of the drug I'd seen in the log, scopolamine. The search results were a nightmare. In South America, it's known as devil's breath. It's a tasteless, odorless drug that wipes a person's memory and turns them into a human zombie, perfectly obedient to whoever is dosing them. In high concentrations, it causes cardiac arrest that looks like a natural stroke. The pieces of the puzzle slammed together, so hard it left me breathless. Jennifer wasn't just a gold digger. She was a serial predator. She was using the drug to make Philip sign over his assets, and then, once the paperwork was ironclad, she would increase the dose until his heart stopped. The Friday deadline in Matt's note finally made sense. Friday was the day Philip was scheduled to meet with a new lawyer to sign a revised will and power of attorney. I looked at the photos of the vials again. She was recording every symptom like a scientist. She knew exactly how much his body could take before it failed. And I was the insurance policy. If I tried to intervene, her partner, a man she called her brother, Gwen, was clearly tasked with making sure I didn't survive to testify. I realized I was in a race against a woman who had done this before and won. I couldn't go to the local police yet. She had charmed half the community. I needed someone who knew how to handle a ghost. Chapter 5, The Secret Ally. The next morning, I intercepted Matt before he walked into his high school in Anchorage. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. When he saw my face, he knew. He climbed into the truck, and before I could even speak, he started crying. "I found her bag, Grandpa," he sobbed. "I saw the needles." I tried to tell Dad, but he didn't even know who I was for a second. He just stared at me and said Jennifer was taking care of him. Matt told me that he had followed Jennifer to the storage unit a week ago. He had seen her meeting with Gwen, a man who didn't look anything like her. They were laughing over a stack of papers. She told him it would all be over by the weekend, Matt whispered. She said they'd be in Seattle by Monday with the first installment of the insurance money. I grabbed Matt's shoulders, looking him dead in the eye. "You did the right thing, Matt. You saved his life." I told him he had to go back to the house and act as if nothing had changed. "She's smart, Matt. If she thinks you've talked to me, she'll move up the timeline. You have to be an actor. Can you do that for your dad?" He wiped his eyes and nodded, the fear in his face turning into a hard, cold resolve. "I'll do it," he said. I watched him walk into the school, feeling a mix of pride and pure, unadulterated terror. I had to move fast. I called Khalid, my old friend and a retired Anchorage police detective. "Khalid," I said when he picked up, "I need your eyes on something. It's life or death." Chapter 6, The Trojan Horse. Khalid met me at a secluded park overlooking the Cook Inlet. As a retired detective, he had seen every kind of evil, but even he was shaken by the logbook photos. "This is Black Widow work, Derek," he said, his voice low. If we just call 911, she'll flush the drugs and claim you're a senile old man trying to ruin her marriage. We need to catch her in the act of administration. Khalid reached into his jacket and pulled out 3 small black cubes. They were high-definition wireless cameras, no bigger than a shirt button. You're a woodworker, Derek. You know how to make things vanish. Get these into the kitchen. We need to see her drugging that tea. That afternoon, I arrived at Philip's house with my tool chest. I told Jennifer that the cabinets I'd built for Patricia years ago were settling in the Alaskan humidity and needed a quick adjustment. She was suspicious, hovering over me like a hawk, but I played the part of the bumbling, talkative grandfather. I complained about my knees, asked her for a glass of water, and while her back was turned, I went to work. I planted the first camera in the spice rack, perfectly angled toward the stove. The second went into the underside of the upper cabinet, facing the coffee maker. The third, I hid in the pantry. By the time I left, the Trojan horse was inside. Khalid and I sat in his basement that night, staring at a laptop screen. We were waiting for the monster to show her face. The house was silent for hours. We watched Philip stumble to bed, looking like a ghost. Jennifer stayed up, sipping wine and scrolling through her phone. Then, at 3:14 a.m., the kitchen light flickered on. Jennifer walked in, her movements sharp and deliberate. She wasn't a perfect wife anymore. Her face was a mask of cold efficiency. She reached into a hidden compartment behind the kickplate of the kitchen island and pulled out a small leather case. From it, she took a syringe and one of the clear vials from the storage unit. We watched, breathless, as she carefully measured the liquid and stirred it into the loose-leaf tea Philip would drink in the morning. She didn't stop there. She pulled out her ledger and made a final entry. "She's finishing him," Khalid whispered, his hand hovering over his phone. On the screen, we saw Jennifer pick up her phone and make a call. She put on speaker. "It's done," she said to the voice on the other end. It was Gwen. "The Friday dose is prepped. It's double strength. He'll sign the papers by noon, and by dinner, he'll have a massive coronary. The old man is at his shop tomorrow morning. You know what to do." "I'll be there," Gwen's voice rasped. "Make sure the back door is unlocked." My heart felt like it was going to explode. They were going to kill us both tomorrow. Khalid looked at me, his eyes hard. "I'm calling Detective Janet at the Major Crimes Unit. We've got them, Derek, but we have to play this perfectly." The raid. Friday morning in Anchorage was cold and gray. I arrived at Philip's house at 8 a.m., my heart hammering against my ribs. I saw Gwen's black sedan parked a block away, waiting. I walked into the kitchen just as Jennifer was handing Philip the steaming mug of poison tea. "Good morning, Philip," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline. Jennifer froze, her smile faltering for a split second. "Derek, you're early. I thought you were at the shop." "I decided I wanted to have breakfast with my son," I said, walking toward the table. Philip looked at me with glassy, unfocused eyes. He tried to lift the mug to his lips. "Don't drink that, Philip," I said firmly. Jennifer stepped between us, her voice turning sharp. "Derek, you're upsetting him. He needs his tea." She reached for the mug, but I grabbed her wrist. The mask finally fell away. Her eyes turned into black pits of rage. "Let go of me, you old fool," she hissed. That was the signal. The front and back doors were kicked in simultaneously. "Police! Drop the mug. Get on the ground." Detective Janet and her tactical team swarmed the kitchen. Jennifer tried to throw the tea into the sink to destroy the evidence, but Janet was faster. She tackled Jennifer to the floor, the mug shattering against the tiles. Outside, we heard the sounds of Gwen being dragged from his car in handcuffs. It was over. The predator was finally in a cage. Justice and recovery. The aftermath was a whirlwind of revelations. The tea was analyzed and found to contain a lethal concentration of scopolamine. In the storage unit, Anchorage police found the passport of 3 other men who had died under Jennifer's care in different states. She wasn't just a killer. She was a ghost who had been moving to the country for a decade, leaving a trail of broken hearts and empty bank accounts. Jennifer, whose real name was Elena Vance, and her partner, Gwen, were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The trial was harrowing, but the real battle was at home. Philip had to undergo months of intensive detoxification and neurological therapy. The damage to his memory was significant, but his brain began to rewire itself. Slowly, the fade reversed. 1 year later, we sat on my porch, the Alaskan summer sun warming our faces. Philip was back at his firm, his mind sharp again, though he carried the emotional scars of betrayal. Matt was a senior in high school now, his laughter finally returning to the house. We were a family of survivors. I looked at my grandson, the boy who had the courage to slip a note under a dinner table when his life was on the line. I realized that Patricia would have been proud.